This video is for those of you who naively believe that there is some kind of middle ground you can find with trans activists and the Alphabet Mafia. There is none, folks, sadly. All you had to do was attend yesterday's March for Children, 1 million March for Children in Victoria. All you had to do was spend some time listening to these folks and listening to their demands. Actually, what you would have heard is endless swearing. You would have heard endless vitriol coming out of these people. Even though the signs may have said something about love, they were far from being loving. How do I know? Well, I was there. I was supposed to be one of the speakers, and I was going to have a 10-minute presentation, but we didn't even get halfway through the speakers before the event got shut down by the police. Why did it get shut down? Well, because the peaceful trans activists were anything but peaceful. They were violent. They were jostling. They were caustic. There was in the crowd that was attending, the people who were supporters of this, there were Muslim women with their young children. There was other mothers with their young children. There were ordinary citizens who were simply saying, as a parent, I think at a minimum, I should have the right to dictate how my child is raised and what morals and what worldview I want to impose or impart upon them. It's my right. Now, let me share a couple of conversations and kind of the overall theme of the people I tried to have a discussion with, but was far than successful because these people are not interested in discussing anything. They are not looking to change their worldview. The first narrative, I would say, the first thing you need to understand is that they feel they are totally entitled to what they are demanding and that society must conform to their worldview. When I challenged them and I said, look, people that are protesting here, they're not saying that you cannot be trans. They're not saying you don't have the right to trans your kids or do whatever. All they're simply saying is leave our kids alone. And their constant rebuttal to that was, well, we're not after your kids. We're not telling your kids what to do. That's delusional. We know that in every policy, all of these gender affirming and all of this gender orientation stuff that's being taught in schools, even if it isn't in a specific class that's geared to it, it's sprinkled in the curriculum throughout. And when I challenged them on this, they said, well, just pull your kids out of school. And I'm thinking, okay, well, how is it that the majority who feel a certain way are the ones who have to pay the price for the minority who want to enjoy a certain way? That makes absolutely no sense. But that was the rebuttal. Pull your children out. And I said, well, I pay taxes. They said, well, it doesn't matter. This is it. We've earned this right. This is, anything less is hatred. Okay, so that's the solution. I should pull them out. Then I had a discussion with an older white woman who was probably like grandmotherly type. And as an observation, most of the audience was predominantly white. There wasn't a lot of color or I would say diversity amongst them. Predominantly either, like I said, older white women, or there was a lot of younger women as well and a lot of young men. Essentially, that was the mix of the crowd. And I challenged this woman. I said, hey, I'm from India. Why do I have to raise my children with the worldview that you have? Why should you have the right to impart that? Sounds a lot like cultural colonialism when a white elderly woman's telling a brown man how to raise her child. And she put up her sign and wouldn't talk to me any further. That was it. And all she started yelling was hate, hate, hate. Wow. So we couldn't have a discussion there. Then I had to try to have a discussion with another set of people who obviously, know and cite the statistics or whatever, and they gave me the classic, wouldn't you rather have a living son than a dead daughter? Okay, well, that is the whole stigmatizing or making you feel guilty over suicide, that your child, unless you conform, will automatically commit suicide. Well, if they paid any attention to statistics, and in Europe the studies are out because this is the only place this type of witch doctrine has been practiced longer than here. Statistically, after 10 years, the suicide rate goes up significantly for kids who've been trans, who have gone through the surgery and undergone all of that stuff. when they've transitioned, their suicide rates go through the roof. Now, my other argument to her was, if this was such an issue, if kids were so bothered and the trans people existed for all this time and all these kids were conflicted, why did we not see astronomical suicide rates among the young for decades? Well, obviously I didn't get an answer because, well, this isn't about science. I could have given them all the facts under the sun. For example, if you leave most children alone, 80% of them grow out of this when they go through this type of, gender dysphoria. I could have cited the fact that the American Medical Association used to consider gender dysphoria a mental health issue. All of these things, but again, the facts simply didn't matter to these folks. They wanted what they were wanting, and they were like rabid dogs, essentially. They were mad with this ideology. There was no piercing this. And I heard one gentleman say, well, I had a very rough life, and until I came to the realization of who I was, my life didn't make sense. And he would have been in his late 40s, early 50s. Well, now he is imparting his own personal experience upon these children. They are the guinea pigs. They are the experiment for what he is looking to do. There was another shameful moment where, again, these people, they have the 2S, which is co-opting the indigenous culture. But there was an indigenous woman who spoke at this event, and she was heckled, booed, sworn at constantly. So obviously, they don't have respect for it. This is very much a motivation on this side of the equation to try to co-opt something. And if you complain about it, then you're racist against indigenous people. That's the argument they'll make. Again, like I said, it was a constant barrage. Then I try to have a conversation with a couple of young people. I shared my own experience of when I came to this country and I encountered real hate and real racism. And for a moment, I had their attention. And then we continued on. And when I challenged them and I said, hey, it seems to me that in a couple of days from now, we are going to be wearing orange shirts marking that every child matters. And basically, it's a lament against the residential school system that was set up across this land. And the fact that that system, I said, was built on the premise that one set of people, you call them European colonialists, whatever you want to call them, according to the critics of the system, they were imparting their own personal values, and they took the children out of homes of indigenous people because they felt these parents had no ability to raise their own kids, and that this group of people knew better how to raise the children of indigenous people. And I said, well, does that not sound eerily familiar to what we're seeing today? We are seeing a school system that essentially is canceling out parents, and that's saying that the parents have no worth or value, and whatever they believe in, especially immigrant parents coming from different lands, their thinking is backwards, and we need to take these children and basically re-educate them or indoctrinate them. Well, obviously I didn't get very far with this argument because at first he agreed with me on everything. And in fact, he even called what happened with residential schools genocide. And he was all on board until he realized the flaw in his argument. That if residential schools were wrong, so is what's happening today. So Soji, so is all of this stuff. It's just as wrong. The law of contradiction says both things can't be true at the same time. And now he was left with this. So what did he retort with? Well, simple. He said, I'm full of hate. I just want to hurt people. And I said, wow, that really sums up your movement really well. And he kind of had this sheepish look as I walked away. And he was amongst a group of other people, but none of them called him out on his hate because they agree with that hate. See, these folks are not rational. And anybody who thinks that they can negotiate with them and that you're going to find some sort of middle ground, you're sadly mistaken. In fact, actually, there was a truism that I encountered from one of the people. He said, well, this was all voted on. And you know what? This is what the majority of people want. And if you don't like it, you can vote, get people elected, and they can vote it out. Okay. So there's our solution, folks. We have to start at the local level, the grassroots, the school board, the municipal, the provincial, the federal. You have to get engaged, get involved. That's the only way we're going to see any kind of change. On the plus side, though, and for those of you who lose hard in the battle, here's what I would leave you with. A year ago, you would have never seen this type of event across the nation. And in other cities, I understand it was quite successful. And the reason it was successful in cities in Ontario and other places, this original event was founded by a Muslim man. And there is a lot of mosques, a lot of Muslims that live in other provinces. And when people come out in force, and especially in the Muslim community, there wasn't none of this BS that happened because people stood their ground. So what that tells me is that more men from different groups, different faiths, or just people, even if you're secular, even if you're an atheist, if you believe this is wrong, we need men to stand up. It can't just be moms with their children, mama bears, trying to defend their children and other children's rights alone. We need everybody to step in because every parent matters. Anyway, I thank you for watching. I do appreciate it. Please post any comments you have in the comment section. You can also follow me on my Rumble, my Locals account. If you haven't yet subscribed to my channel, please do so. And if you're one of those haters who sent me hate mail, hey, continue on. I mean, if you want to have an honest discussion, happy to, but I know that's never going to happen. And I will see you next time.